Questioning the effects of petrol subsidy removal and the way forward for the oil and gas sector topped the agenda at this year's PENGAS Energy and Labour Summit in Abuja. Some stakeholders there confirmed that petrol is partially being subsidized. Arise correspondent Georgina Ndukwe Ezianyika has more.
This three-day PENGAS Energy and Labour Summit brings together energy experts, policy framers, labor unions and other stakeholders to deliberate the multifaceted impact of deregulating the downstream sector. Harnessing Nigeria's vast gas potentials is also the focus of this summit, as highlighted by the president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria.
The removal of PMS subsidies and current state of our refineries are of paramount importance, touching the lives of every Nigerian. These are intricate challenges that demand comprehensive solutions.
Deregulation is intended to improve efficient and effective utilization of scarce resources, end product scarcity, improve operations in the sector.
Setting the stage for discussions, the head of Nigeria's oil company says expanding Nigeria's gas infrastructure will ensure citizens have access to cleaner and alternative energy from 2024.
We must do everything possible to bring to reality the current progress that is being made on CNG buses across the country and also converting vehicles to CNG driven. And this is an enormous enterprise. It is ongoing, it is hugely supported by government.
Stakeholders here agree that government needs to invest more in compressed natural gas-powered buses for mass transportation, healthcare, and education to enable Nigerians reap the full benefits of the removal of subsidy on petrol.
My expectation would have been we have the framework, the structure to make sure that these shocks that will come to the ordinary Nigerians are mitigated. And one of the ways you do that is by ensuring that subsidy now goes to the area of transportation.
I would still go to China to solve our transportation problem. Let's go to Innocent. Give Innocent billions of naira. Tell them the buses you want to see the next 1 year. You pay them today, they manufacture for the next 3-4 years. And all these vehicles, they will all be CNG-equipped automobiles.
Experts say the existence of partial deregulation is a current reality, considering the fact that global oil prices have since increased, but pump price of petrol still remains the same.
Subsidy is back. Subsidy is gone, but also subsidy is back. If we are actually going to pay the actual amount, we should not be paying 600 naira. We all know that when we started paying 600 naira, the price of crude was less than $80 per barrel. Right now, the price of crude hit 3 weeks ago was about 90 something. It's at about $89 now. And that economy means the government is paying a part of subsidy for us to be paying what we are paying.
The theme for this year's event is petroleum downstream deregulation and gas utilization for a sustainable energy future in Nigeria. Georgina Ndukwe Ezianyika, Arise News.
Meanwhile, the Group CEO of Nigeria's National Oil Company, NNPCL Limited, has addressed the ongoing debate about fuel subsidy in Nigeria. In a chat with State House correspondents, Mele Kyari clarified that the NNPC is not incurring subsidy costs. Kyari highlights that market forces and global oil prices determine fuel prices in Nigeria and that there is no financial burden placed on the government or taxpayers due to subsidies. On cues resurfacing, Kyari reassures the public that there is sufficient product supply and no significant issues regarding the delivery, while efforts are also being actively pursued to address critical matters related to access to foreign exchange. Well, Rufai, PENGAS versus Mr. Mele Kyari, CEO of Group MD of NNPCL. Who do we believe? And is subsidy gone? Is subsidy still there?
I read my lips. Subsidy, under recovery, whatever they call it, is back full throttle. And there are facts on ground. There are facts to justify it. The first fact I'll say is go and check the fact report. The fact report that was recently released showed how much the NNPC plunged into this. In fact, the line item of that money was from the NNNG. Secondly, empirical information. empirical information teaches us that crude oil prices has been hovering about $98 per barrel without any attendant increase in the pump price. It shows you somebody is paying the difference somewhere. Another empirical report, if you go and check a report by Punch newspaper a couple of days ago, it says that landing cost is $720 as we speak today. In fact, the story says landing cost is $720, most marketers are not happy and running away from the depots. So how can your landing cost be $720 based on the reports, and we're paying pump price at 6 something, and you say we're not paying subsidy? Another point I'd like to make is the fact that increasingly people have touted the fact that we are paying subsidies. And the president did say there was going to be a price freeze in one of his speeches. A price freeze on petrol means that market forces do not apply any longer. And it's the price freeze we've been enjoying. That's why you see the stability. Since the last increment to 581, it has always been. In other regards, we also have price increase from over 400 to 500. Market forces used to apply then. So the facts are clear. I've cited 4 different authorities on this that shows that subsidy regime is back. If it's like Kyari says we're not paying subsidy, the kind of thing he says has an antecedent. President Buhari's government who told that pockies before, the British would call it pockies. They said we're not paying subsidies. At some point they said we're paying under recoveries. And the truth finally came out. They couldn't hide it any longer. So truth has to be told. We have something on ground. And it goes back to what the Financial Times did say. That President Tinubu should stop making impetuous decisions. He should be circumspect. Decisions that he cannot implement. I didn't say it. Financial Times said it in an op-ed. Because when we announced subsidy is gone, this was the same Mr. Mele Kyari that said, oh, the president was just saying that subsidy is gone because there was no more provision for it. This was the same person. This was the same person that kicked against petrol company, petrol filling stations, raising prices, saying that we have enough stock in place. But all of a sudden, NNPCL station raised prices. We all remember what happened in May. And we remember the conundrum with oil. So it just goes back to the decision-making process. Dr. Abati, kudos to you. I'd like to give you honor this morning. You wrote a very stellar article at the back page of this day, Tinubunomics. It shows the kind of economics we have performed. 5 steps forward, 10 steps backwards. No real coherence as regards policy. Apart from Tinubunomics, let me now go back to Felanomics. That's a paper issued by Mr. Tilewa Adebajo. Felanomics. Fela tells the story in one of his songs of a certain government worker that wanted to buy a fan, that was saving money to be able to get the amount to buy the fan. By the time he got that amount, inflation has increased the price of the fan. That's where Nigerians are today. Economy at an all-time low, a lot of haphazard decisions. That's why I see this dilly-dallying. What is the way forward? We all know. The government has promised alternative use of energy. Let's see how they can expedite that presidential initiative on CNG. Because the way forward will be a lot of alternative use of energy. We have a lot of gas. We are more a gas nation. Secondly, how can we even have local refining within? Thirdly, how can we explore many other forms of transportation across our value chain? Rail, yes, to a large extent. I'm happy about the new rail line in Lagos. We should build more so that people can have alternative. If we can drop the amount of people that use petrol on the daily and we have alternative means of transportation, then we can be able to cushion this and have something I've always constantly advocated for called the energy mix. Every country in the world has an energy mix. Ours is always slanted towards petrol. May God help us.
Okay, yesterday obviously was a very busy day for Mr. Mele Kyari, the GMD CEO of NNPCL. He was a guest speaker at the PENGAS Summit, and he also reportedly was at the villa to meet with the president and subsequently address the press. Now, quite a number of things that he said, both at the summit and also during his interaction with the press at the villa. One, he said that, look, the extension of the removal of subsidy till May 29 was a problem because there was no monetary allocation for it. That as a result of that, NNPC had to carry, the cost on its balance sheet. And in that regard, he said if the president had not announced the removal of fuel subsidy by May 29, NNPCL will have become bankrupt. In other words, he made the point that there will be no going back on the deregulation of the downstream sector and the removal of fuel subsidy. Number two, he said that we import 100% of our products. And of course, that's not a good thing for a country that is resource dependent. If we import 100% of our products and that, NNPCL has a responsibility to deliver on its mandate. And in that regard, he made a statement of hope that by next year, Nigeria will be a net exporter of refined petroleum products. Well, I consider it as giving people hope because we have had it before. Chief Timipre Silva, as Minister of State for Petroleum, in 2022, about 3 times in 2022, up till this 2023, was promising that refineries will be ready and they will be up and running and that Dangote refinery will also join. This is October 2023. What we are having, the kind of optimism that Mr. Kyari is offering, is the kind of optimism that Chief Timipre Silva offered. So Nigerians have reached a point where they no longer believe in this idea of local refining when the refineries will come back and they will be very active. So in that regard, I don't think anybody would trust what he was saying. He also made a point that we do not have credible data with regard to fuel consumption in the country. The GMD CEO of NNPCL telling Nigerians that we don't have data. We don't even know how much fuel we consume. That in itself will look like an indictment of the government. Fourth, he made the point that there is need to fast-track the CNG initiative, the compressed natural gas initiative, which the federal government of Nigeria has been talking about, so that vehicles can be converted and the stress with petrol, will not be an issue. Well, when is government going to start the conversion? Where will the selling points be for the gas? One other issue that he raised was about Forex. Oil marketers have been complaining about the foreign exchange regime, that they don't have access to FX. If they don't have access to FX, it is that accounts for the monopoly that NNPCL enjoys. So when he talks about the competition in the market, where that competition really does not exist, because NNPCL enjoys, 100% monopoly, and the marketers are just dependent. Now, the big issue that he now addressed has to do with whether fuel subsidy is back or not. And in this regard, he holds a position that is different from that of PENGAS members and also the oil marketers. The oil marketers, who should know, are saying that landing cost as at last week was 720 naira. Fuel is sold between 580 naira per liter and 617 naira per liter, depending on where you purchase it or the part of the country from where you are getting your petrol. So if landing cost is 720 naira and you are selling at 580 or 617, then of course, who is paying for that difference? But the reality of it is that the situation is even likely to get worse with petrol. With the war that has broken out between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, fuel price has gone up by about 4%. Global economic stability is likely to be affected. And countries like Nigeria that are even importing what they are producing. We have crude oil here, but we are importing crude oil. We'll end up paying more for it. Well, I guess we should not expect the GMD CEO of NNPCL to be a critic. Government itself being an investor in NNPCL, up to a significant percentage. But the people who are involved in the process, in the marketing of petroleum products, they are not likely to be as restrained. And that's why they are saying fuel subsidy is back. And if fuel subsidy is back, Why was he removed in the first place? Did we look at all the variables? And this issue of the refineries that organized labor is always talking about, why is it that the refineries are always, objects of promise and hope? Because by this time next year, those refineries may not work. And in any case, even if we're told, even if you supply enough, even if there are no bottlenecks in terms of distribution that the GMD NNPCL was referring to, would we be able at any point produce enough to meet local consumption and to achieve those objectives that Mr. Kyari was talking about, creation of wealth, creation of jobs, and an effective and efficient value chain, in the oil and gas sector. These are some of the issues. But I think, a forum such as they had yesterday, with all the players in the oil and gas sector coming together to exchange ideas is useful. But beyond the ideas, what will be the outcomes? And is government actually listening?
All right, well, just to summarize, because of our time, has already been established, I guess the main question here is, as I posed the question earlier to you, Rufai, is who should we believe, whose word should we take? Naturally, one should assume that the NNPCL should have information and data to back up their claims that subsidy has been totally removed and hasn't crept back Nicodemously, as we've often said. Whilst PENGAS, on the other hand, is saying, if you look at the facts which we have presented to you and which we have analyzed, which has been analyzed this morning, it doesn't make sense, except it's by some miracle. And maybe that's what Mr. Mele Kyari ought to be demonstrating or perhaps explaining to the Nigerian people. How is it that the landing cost is at about 720 naira, and then fuel price, pump prices, I bought it at 578 naira this morning? The maths doesn't add up. And so when they present a case like that, it's difficult to understand. Maybe there's some areas that they need to explain better to us as Nigerians, or there's some hidden mathematics or hidden formula that we're not aware of, which makes it possible that they have full recovery of costs, as he said yesterday during the meeting. It would give assurances. What this does is that it doesn't improve the lack of trust that Nigerians have in agencies like NNPCL, in what the president says, like he said on May 29, that subsidy is gone. Let the people know the true state of things. If subsidy is back, that's one of the things that organized labor had agitated for, to return to status quo until the government has a proper plan in place to ensure the smooth transition from going away from subsidy. Yes, we understand the fact that, according to what Mr. Mele Kyari had said, there's no money, there's no provision for fuel subsidy. However, something is not adding up. And so where is that money coming from, number one? Number two is, how is it being funded? Where is the provision for that? Anyways, we need to go to our next story now, but I believe that this poses more questions, perhaps, than any answer that we will have. But it goes back again to policy direction, policy formulation, and very importantly, policy implementation. We move on to our next story. 9 months after pulling the trigger to kill a pregnant lawyer in Ajah, Lagos, suspended Assistant Superintendent of Police Vandi Dramdi was on Monday sentenced to death by hanging by a Lagos High Court. Arise News correspondent Oba Adeoye, who has been following the story, was in court.
While several families across Lagos were celebrating the Christmas festival in December 2022, the family of 41-year-old Bolanle Rahim was thrown into mourning by a trigger-happy policeman, Drambi Vandi, who was then an assistant superintendent of police. Drambi had stopped a car on the Christmas day for routine check around the Ajah Bridge. In the process, he fired a bullet which penetrated the chest of Bolanle Rahim, a property lawyer who was riding in the car with her husband and other relatives. Bolanle was pregnant. The trigger-happy cop was arrested and subsequently dragged to court by the Lagos State government on a one-count charge premised on Section 223 of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015. Today, the court found him guilty and sentenced him to death by hanging. While delivering the judgment, Justice Ibirunke Harrison says the court affirmed through a postmortem that Rahim died of bullet wounds she sustained from Drambi's AK-47. The judge also established that the policeman actually pulled the trigger against his claim that the bullet presented as exhibit was not from his rifle. The judge says the prosecution team from the Lagos State government has proven the case beyond all reasonable doubt.
The prosecution is obviously happy about the results of this conviction, and we hope it will bring a closure for the family of late Mrs. Bolanle Rahim. And we thank the government headed by Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu for providing the enabling environment for being able to see this prosecution through. And we also thank the police for their cooperation.
The defense lawyer, however, gave an indication that the judgment will be appealed.
Well, when you have a judgment in a lower court, there's opportunity for you. This is not the final state. It's just like a football competition. There's the primaries, there's the quarterfinals, there's the semi, and there's the final. So when we read the judgment, we know what step. You would also hear when she said, when I asked for a copy of the judgment, and my Lord says she knows we want to move forward. It's not yet over until it is over.
We had continuously represented in a way that is very resounding all of our members, and most times on ground, to ensure that this matter takes the attention, it is given the priority that it deserves. And we must say that the judge has done exactly what he has been sworn in to do, which is the responsibility to deliver justice in good time. Justice delayed, we know, is justice denied. And in this case, justice has not been delayed, justice has not been denied, justice has been done.
I have to say that today, justice has been delivered. The incident of the 25th of December 2022 would always and forever remain a tragedy to the Rahim family because it altered a lot of lives. The life of the deceased, the life of her husband, the life of her daughter, and the life of several other people that loved her. However, justice has been served. Within the period of 10 months, the Honorable Justice Harrison has been able to deliver her judgment and has been able to ensure that justice has been brought to the forefront.
A 2020 report by Amnesty International indicates that at least 1,162 people were killed by policemen between January 2017 and December 2019, while a Lagos-based research firm, SBM Intelligence, published that the police killed an estimated 1,187 people in Nigeria in 2021 alone. Oba Adeoye, Arise News, Lagos.
Fine.
Very sad one. Commiserations again to the family of the slain lawyer there. I just hope they are able to find peace, and I just hope, they can start to heal. But the shocking part I want to talk about is the scourge of police killing people. We need to be able to do something about it. We all remember EdSARS. And you can hear the reports, over 1,000 people killed needlessly by the police. We have a culture of killing people unnecessarily, indiscriminately in this country. And it's a culture we need to tackle. Because whatever strategy we put in place, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. I say that every single day. We need to sanitize the police force. Except if we don't do that, this will happen again. Sad reality.
Well, there are specific offenses that carry the capital punishment. And one of those offenses under our criminal code is murder under section 315 of the criminal code. And what Justice Ibirunke Harrison has done here is to apply the full weight of the law. Now, as indicated, he said, well, the prosecution proved their case beyond reasonable doubt. And second, the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming in this particular case. 11 witnesses were called. None of the 11 witnesses could say he or she actually saw, Vandy pulling the trigger. But under the circumstances, His Lordship says, the evidence was overwhelming. So those are the grounds. But the defense counsel is also right to say, well, they can go on appeal. Okay, fine. But at this level, at the level of the High Court, justice has been done. 2, this should serve as a lesson to all law enforcement officers, whether police or whatever, that the fact that you are wearing a uniform does not give you the right to perform an unlawful act. In fact, even if you are given an instruction by your superior to break the law, you have the responsibility to disobey that superior officer. You can't be sent even on an errand to go and kill. And that is why all policemen should learn a lesson from this, that being trigger happy and misbehaving outside the code of conduct for law enforcement officers could land you in serious trouble, because nobody is above the law. Even law enforcement officers are not above the law. Number 3, very sad incident. You recall that this incident that has been tried occurred on Christmas Day. This 41-year-old woman, pregnant woman, was returning from church with her husband when this man who has now been sentenced to death by hanging, shot her in cold blood. And that was very shocking to the entire community. So people must know that if you do the crime, you will do the time. And if it's a capital offense, the punishment for it is capital punishment. Again, we commiserate with the Rahim family and everyone that knew Mrs. Omobolanle Rahim. A very painful, very promising lawyer, and to die along with her pregnancy was most unfortunate. And justice, indeed, must be done.
Absolutely. Really a Black Christmas Day for the Rahim family. The news was trending, a number of people quite horrified by the actions of one policeman in the midst of his other colleagues, Mr. Drambi Vandy, who shot Mrs. Rahim because she tried to pull over when he tried to stop the car on Christmas Day morning. Now, I must salute Justice Justice Ibironke Harrison, for the swift and sharp response in terms of judgment. As the lawyer said in that video, that justice delayed can be said to be justice denied. But in this case, in a record 10 months, they were able to take on the case and deliver a judgment. Also, kudos to the Lagos State government and the Office of the Public Defender and all those who stood up for this woman, at least to ensure that her death didn't go in vain. Now, talking about her death not going in vain, beyond this sentencing for Mr. Vandy, is what lessons can we learn from this? It would be sad if, yes, he's sentenced to death, but we hear of another killing in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time. We heard the statistics, over 1,000 according to Amnesty International, in fact 1,162, while according to SBM Intelligence, 1,187 in 1 year alone by police officers. If you put that side by side and put it in context, currently in the Israel-Hamas war, the world is going agog because they're saying the death toll has reached over 1,500. That is for statistics for people at war. These numbers, over 1,000, are our own law enforcement agencies killing its own people. We need to bring this to an end. So one of the things I'm hoping the police force has done, bearing in mind this particular case, is a review of processes, a retraining of officers. What are the lessons learned? A full report. One of the things we must advocate for beyond justice or in addition to justice is a change, a reorientation of our police officers. Too many lives have been lost. And no, we shouldn't, look forward to or look at another life being lost. Unfortunately, even though the police has cooperated on this particular case, we still see blatant abuse of power on the streets across Nigeria, across the country, where police officers stop civilians arbitrarily and for frivolous offenses, lock them up or ask or extort for money. How do we change the system? We need a systemic change. Mrs. Bolanle Rahim is one woman, unfortunately, has a ripple effect on the lives of others. But let us ensure that we protect our young people, whether they choose to have dreads on or not, whether they choose to carry laptops or not. Let's hope that we protect innocent civilians who are going about their duties on a daily basis from law enforcement agents who are supposed to be protecting them. So this is a call for the police to reform its process, to retrain its officers, and for punishments like this, sharp punishments like this, to show as a deterrent to other police officers who might want to who might want to abuse their office in the discharge of their duties.